You want to see what goes into making a Scooby-Doo themed ambiance video? From animating frames, to creating scenes, to sound effects and music. I'm showing you the whole process. There are three main applications that I use to create these videos. I use Photoshop to create all the graphics, background scenes, and frames for the animations, After Effects to assemble those together to create the animated scenes, and then Final Cut Pro to put all the scenes together, do all the sound effects and music, and then create all the loops. Stick around to the end to see how many hours it took to create the entire thing. The first step is to scrub through the episode and look for cool backgrounds, and things that could be looped or used as animations. I start by creating a document and capturing screen captures, noting the time that these shots appear so that I can go back and get the frames that are going to work. I don't always know what I'm doing at the start. Just going through the episode a few times can help determine what I'm going to do. Making notes about the sounds I want to do and, asking questions. What does an empty building sound like at night? What does the night sound like? This will help later when I go to get sounds. Some of the best ideas don't come to me until I've been working on the video for a while. Once I have the idea and the scenes thought out, I start by creating the animation loops. The first animation I decided to work on was the night running. A typical running animation in these Scooby cartoons is somewhere between 8 and 12 frames. So I will get the screenshot for those and bring them into Photoshop as separate layers. And then I have to go through each one and figure out where the biggest height and width are. And then I crop that down as you just saw. And then I simply go frame by frame and mask out what I'm cutting out. Masking each layer and getting rid of all the background stuff. Because he's largely the same color as the background, it was a little bit difficult to get him cleanly cut out with each frame. I won't show you every frame. You can use your imagination as to how much time this took to do all the frames. It is kind of meditative once you get into doing this, though. I just listen to music and go frame by frame, cleaning up all the edges so I have a nice clean animation. And there are all the frames for the night. Some animations are easier. This one has 3 frames. I only had to create the half-closed eyes and the fully closed shot. So this was pretty quick. The blink is done. The sparkle frames can be used anytime the knight shows up. I can put them anywhere on his body once I have them cut out. They'll be reusable, as you'll see later. That was super easy. The Scooby frames, this one was interesting. I decided at the last minute to show him rising out of the urn. So I had to cut that out, and it was pretty laborious because those flowers, there was no easy way to pick those out off the background, so I had to do those very manually. Again, I enjoy doing this, so it's kind of like meditative to do it, but it can get a little tedious sometimes. Someone asked why I didn't show Scooby running out of the urn, and I can only imagine how much time that would have taken to do that entire animation. This 12 or 14 frames here was enough. Scoob's done. Now in constructing the scenes, this one is the outside of the museum. There was no full shot of the museum at night, so I had to create this on the fly. So basically what I'm doing is assembling a shot that doesn't exist in the cartoon from the daytime shot of the museum and the nighttime shot of the museum. You can see that it can be quite a bit of work to assemble the full museum. Because the older cartoons don't have the widescreen aspect ratio, I have to fill in the sides, top and sides of the frame, so I use generative fills. And then the moon and clouds were not in that position, but I thought they would add a lot to the shot, so I decided to drop them in at the upper left there. Removing the little spots. And here's a satisfying one, that spot on the front of the museum, phew, gone. Now it's time to set this up so that I want that light to turn off. So I need the gang to disappear, like they went inside or something. So I had to remove them and darken the van. I guess this is where my art degree comes in handy, because I kind of had to paint in the dark part of the building here. There was no easy way to do this, so I just painted and stamped color from other areas of the building to make this appear that the light is off. Now to make sure the little plaque looks like it's in the darkness, and then setting the levels on the door to make that look like it's in shadow as well. Now I can turn the light on and off. The last thing to do is to do the lightning, which I usually do through an exposure layer. I set a really high exposure so it looks like it's light, and then I mask out the areas that should not be lit up by the lightning. And I'll do a background where the lightning is in the sky, like heat lightning. And I'll do the foreground separately, where the buildings or foreground elements are lit up. That way I can turn them both on at once, or do one or the other to make the lightning look varied. Here I'm just masking out areas that I don't want the lightning to show. Little final touches. And this scene is almost done. Scene 2, the masks room, was something new for me, because I wanted to start in with a zoom, which I'd never done before. So I start these wider scenes by assembling shots from the pan of the cartoon, and then I'm making my notes as I go. I start cutting out the things that I'm going to animate, much like the night. In this case, I wanted the two mask items in the foreground to be moving the whole time, like rocking in the wind or something, so I had to cut them out. You can see that there's a lot of masking and drawing in the process. Blending in of different background shots. Now I had to crop this scene down to 1920 by 1080 because that's the aspect ratio for the YouTube videos. So the scene was wider at the start, so I had to move things in and crop them down. You'll see that I also do that in the coffin scene. Again, cleaning up the edges of an animated item and actually creating the edges of the feathers that didn't exist because in the cartoon it was off the edges of the screen. Same thing with the top of that head. Now, doing the lightning with an exposure layer and painting in the areas that are supposed to be brightened by the lightning. Gotta have lightning. What's a spooky ambiance video without some thunder and lightning? Scene 3, the coffin room. I wanted to animate the coffin door opening, which you'll see is a major problem, and added a lot of time to creating this video. The swinging coffin door scene does not show the bottom of the coffin lid, so I actually had to create that for each frame. So this scene took a lot of planning, so I was taking some notes as I went along as to what I was going to do. First of all, we had to remove Fred and Daphne, so I'm going to use some generative fill. selecting them so that I can cut them out, and then poof, they're gone. And I painted in a few things that didn't show up by default, like the lines of the bricks. Cleaned up some other things that were left over from the fill. And then removing the lines between the frames. The scene is still too wide, so I'm gonna have to cut it down or do something drastic to get the coffins and the statue on the left to fit. So I'm putting guides as to where the screen should be for the width. And then you can see I'm moving things into the center. I'm gonna move the coffins over to the left a little bit, just like I moved the statue over to the right. Painting some lines off the floor. Cleaning up the edge of that coffin. So now it all fits in 1920 by 1080 dimensions. If I hadn't wanted to animate the coffin door opening, I would have probably been done, but I just had to have the coffin door swing open. So as you'll see, that added a significant amount of work. And it was only 5 or 6 frames, but because the bottom half of the coffin lid didn't exist, I had to create all of that, as you'll see shortly. If this looks like a lot of work, it is. This might have been one of the most difficult things I've done on any ambiance video so far. So right now I'm tracing out all of the frames of the coffin lid from it being closed to being fully open. Initially, I was going to keep the hand in there too, so you see me tracing around the hand. So now you can see all the frames, and they're darker, so I had to try to color match them to the one door that I had. And then frame by frame, I use a warp tool to warp the doors into shape. Basically, I took the feet of the one frame and copied them to the other frames that did not have the feet of the door on them. And then I blend them in, color match them, so it looks like this was the cartoon. Then I decided to get rid of the hands because I thought it would be cool to have the knight peek out from the coffin. Final step, adding the lightning with an exposure layer and painting out where the lightning should show or not. So I thought it'd be cool to have the lightning kind of coming into that back hall. And the scene is done. The final scene is the hallway scene, which is one of those endless panning, running scenes that you see in these cartoons. The background is repeating over and over again. So we can replicate that in After Effects, but we need to get the entire background pasted together first. So I start by scrolling to the side in the video and taking screenshots and then layering them over and over. And where there's a character, I need to remove them, where I select the character and then use a generative fill to make him easily disappear. In these cartoons too, even though the background looks the same as it goes side to side, as it's scrolling past, the colors actually change. The frames get darker or lighter, so I have to really blend in the edges when I'm pasting frame to frame. You can see the difference in the color of the floor between those two slides. More difference in the floor color between frames. Painting Shaggy away. We almost have the entire shot. I have to make sure that the far left side is going to perfectly match the far right side so that I can loop it endlessly in After Effects. So now I've got my perfect loop. I do some cleanup, getting the floor to blend in, and finally doing the lightning, painting in where the heat lightning or the lightning should show. Pretty simple in this scene, as there's just one window and some light falling on the wall and the floor. And that scene is done. I decided at the last minute I should change a couple of the paintings in the hallway scene. I took this masked character that was also in the episode and put it in one of the paintings. So I took a screenshot and colored it to be similar and dropped it in. And then I thought it'd be cool to have the gang, so I searched for the frame that looks like that and drop that in as well. This one took a little bit longer to match and make look like it's in the shadow and part of the hallway. Had to darken it and blur it a bit. Exporting the frames is pretty straightforward. I get them sized and then run a script from Photoshop to save every layer as an individual file that I can use to animate in After Effects. You can see Photoshop will just run through all the night frames one by one and kick them all out as separate images. Same thing with Scooby. What I realized with Scooby, though, is I was missing a couple frames. I wanted his head to stay up and him to blink while his head remained up, so I created those frames. Those were not in the cartoon. Then I save out all the lightning frames and save all the coffin doors and the paintings. Now that all the animated stuff is done from Photoshop, we move into After Effects. This is where all the animation will actually take place. So I drag everything into the project and we start with the museum scene. So we drag background images in, the lightning images, and the light turning on and off. And now we animate the night. And the turning head. I am by no means a professional After Effects user, and I used to do these animations directly in Final Cut Pro, which I think was pretty foolish, but I didn't know what I didn't know. I get a little better and a little faster with each video, but still quite a lot of work. So animating the sparkle and then dragging that into the different night animations. So every time the knight appears, he has a sparkle on him. And once these are animated, I can drop them into a scene anywhere. Animating the blink with the sparkle. And then pulling those animated knights into the scene and sizing them and moving them where I want them to go. A lot of times I don't know where I'm going to put them when I start. I just kind of make it up as I go. I thought I wanted him to rise up in the foreground, but decided at the last second I wanted him to rise up back there. And then I mask it out. Then I add this big knight in the foreground. This was a last-minute decision to make him walk towards you and get darker as he comes towards you. I'd never done that before, and it took quite a while for me to figure out how to do, but I think it turned out pretty well as a scene transition. And then finally I do the lightning. I just space it out to make it seem natural. And that scene is all set. For the masks scene, I wanted to push myself a little bit, so I tried a pan in, which I'd never done before, and I thought it'd be cool when it's panning in to have the masks part like you're walking into the room. It took me a while to get this dialed in, so it felt like a smooth intro to the scene. So each mask had to go from dark to light and big to small and pull back from the center to its position and then continue to move slightly throughout the entire scene. Then I added the knight, which we've already animated, and I wanted him to run back and forth through the hallway, so I animated him 3 times here. And at some point, we also introduced the knight rising up from the foreground as well. So because it's already animated, all I need to do is place them where I want them and resize them so he looks like he fits the scene. Then I add masks, so it looks like he's running behind objects. Like you can see here, I'm drawing a mask, so it's going to look like he runs behind those statues. Now for the third running knight, where he runs back across the hallway, way in the background. Then I add a mask for this as well, so it looks like he runs behind those far statues. Then I just need to animate the knight rising up in the foreground. And as always, the final touch for these scenes is the lightning. And I space that out so that it just seems natural. I'll add the thunder sound effects when we get into Final Cut Pro. And with that, that scene is done. The coffin scene was actually easy to assemble in After Effects. The bulk of the work was in Photoshop, making these frames for the coffin door and sizing it down horizontally so it would fit in 1920 by 1080 resolution. So again, we drop in the knight. I want him running in the hallway in the back, so I animate that. And add a mask so it looks like he's running in that door. This was a last-minute decision as well. I wasn't sure what I was going to put in the coffin, but I decided that I could probably work with the blink animation and size it down and turn it just enough to make it look like he is in the coffin and peeking out at you. Again, this is something that just came to me as I was working on the scene. I didn't really plan it out. I try to tell a story with these animations. In this one, he keeps getting closer to you. He's running in the back hall, then he appears in the coffin, and then he appears very close to you. The final stage is doing all the lightning. And that scene is done. The hallway scene is a little tricky in that we first have to set up the endless loop. So we paste the background image, 3 of them together, and link them and move from right to left. Now we're animating the Scooby rising from the urn. We didn't do this earlier because he doesn't appear in any other scenes. I wanted him to rise up and sit there and blink at you for a second and then sink back down. A lot of these character animations are just about getting the timing correct so it looks like it could have been animated in the cartoon. This was actually really hard to put together because I couldn't use my normal endless loop process because I wanted each pass of the hallway to be different. I planned this out so that each pass of the hall is 1 minute long and there would be 3 passes. And each time you go through the hallway, there's different things that happen, or Scooby is in a different location. So I had to do a loop 1, loop 2, and loop 3. So in each scene, Scooby appears in a different location, and the knight appears in a different way, either running through the hallways or rising up from the foreground. I'm animating the lightning as I go. In this pan, I set Scooby in the back. He's in the dark a little bit, way back by that statue. In this shot, I have the knight run back and forth in the back hallways. I had to add masks again like I did in the other scenes, so it made it look like he's behind the pillars. Finally, I had the knight rising up from the foreground. And one last appearance from Scooby in the urn. Then I make sure I have the lightning dialed in, just like the other 3 scenes. Because this scene is always moving, the timing was a lot trickier to get right, as far as when the lightning appears, or when Scooby pops his head out of the urn, or when the knight runs, or when the knight rises. And that scene is all set. Now we just need to render each scene, which generates every frame. The first 3 scenes are all 2 minutes each, and the last scene with the hallway pan is 3 minutes. So there's 9 minutes in total. Finally, we're in Final Cut Pro. This is where I take the generated rendered scenes and put them all together and add the common Mystery Supply intro. And here I'm adding the fades that go between the scenes so that each scene fades out into the next. And now I'm marking everywhere the knight appears, Scooby appears, or anything that happens. Coffin door opens, any event. Because this is where I'm going to line up my sound effects. For the sound effects, the first thing I do is create an audio scratch project. This is where I bring in the full cartoon in a separate project and start chopping it up and finding all the interesting audio that I could use. Whether it's a character talking or a sound effect, I go through the entire episode and chop out anything that might be remotely useful. I actually don't use most of it, but I come back to it and reference it and figure out what the best stuff is to use. Unfortunately, in this episode, every time the knight growled, there was some other sound effect or a laugh track over it, so I couldn't get clear growls of the knight. So I did end up having to go look for growling sound effects. To do the sound effects, I go back to the audio scratch file and extract the audio from any clip that seems like it was going to work, and then I go back into the main project and paste it. And then I start positioning them and chopping the sounds up. So you can see I'm placing like the coffin door sound effect. When Velma says something.
Tall, tin, dark, and creepy.
For the night sound effects, I mentioned I had to go get growl sound effect that sounded like him because I couldn't get it cleanly from the cartoon. I also couldn't get his squeaks when his helmet turns cleanly from the cartoon, so I had to go get some metal grating sound effects. And I was able to find sound effects for the growl and the night running. Because all my sound effects are grouped into different groups, dialogue, sound effects, and music, it's easy to later generate a music-only version of this ambiance video by just turning off the dialogue and sound effects. I started doing that because I realized that people also like just the music versions. I personally like the versions with the sound effects in them better. I think it's more immersive. Now I'm doing the thunder sound effects. I've copied these thunder sound effects from previous ambiance videos because I already had the levels set and they were chopped up as I needed them. So it does make doing sound effects in later ambiance videos easier because I can reference sound effects I've used before. The same goes for music. So right here I'm lining up the thunder sound effects with the lightning. After the sound effects are complete, I move on to doing the music. I grab music that I've done in previous ambiance videos. It really gives me a head start. I have the original soundtrack files, which you can find online. And I've cut them up so that I can make loops. I can extend the loops as long as I need if a scene is long. But once the music is done, it's all about setting the audio levels, making sure the sound effects aren't too loud, making sure that you can hear the voice over the music if a character is speaking, and making sure the music isn't too loud either. So I go through and I will make last minute changes on things. As you can see here, I'm moving some things around. And then it's making loops. I like to set it up so that I've got these exact 2-minute and 3-minute scene loops, so it makes it easy to copy and paste them over and over again to extend them for the ambiance video. All these scenes together are only 9 minutes of video. But if I want to extend it for an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours, I need to be able to easily copy and paste them. So I set up these loops that can be copied and pasted just like this. And there's the entire ambiance video. The last step is just to export it. I hope you enjoyed watching my process for creating a Scooby-Doo ambiance video. Do you have a guess as to how many hours it took to create the Night in the Museum ambiance video? It took this long, 33 hours. Have you checked out my Scooby-Doo ambiance videos? If so, which one was your favorite? Let me know in the comments. Until then, keep things spooky and kooky.